Today, our subject of today's broadcast is self-love. And that'll be our focus today. It's on the heels of last week's subject, which is about facing fear. And I think the two are very closely connected, and it's why I decided to pick them as my first two subjects. And you will see today how they link very nicely together. And I'll do referring a little bit back to some of the things that we spoke about last week. So let's dive right into today's topic. So today is about self-love. So this is close to my heart because it really is the starting point of everything. Those of you who may have read in some of my previous blogs, you would know that I've spoken quite a bit about my own journey with my relationship with myself and how I've had a very poor relationship with myself for most of my adult life. I had very little love for myself. I had a lot of self-doubt. My inner critic had a very, very loud voice, and I listened to it all the time. And I didn't really know how to balance that voice out with a more positive one. I always felt less, not enough, not good enough. And I measured myself against what I perceived others expected of me. And I've since learned that what I perceived and reality are two very, very different things. Now, how this relates a little bit to what we spoke about last week is last week we spoke about facing fears, and I gave a few tips and practices that you can do in order to face your own fears and find courage. And obviously by facing fears, that's where we find growth. The thing is that the step before facing fear is courage is also closely linked to our own belief in ourselves. And the better the belief is that we have, the better the confidence we have in ourselves, the easier it is to take that step of courage. So it is key for us to love ourselves very much and to understand that the relationship that we have with ourselves is the single most important relationship that we have in our lives. It is more important than the relationship we have with our partner, with our children, with our family and our friends. Because if we don't have a healthy relationship with ourselves, we cannot be a complete and proactive and a healthy member of the relationship that we have with anybody else. So for myself, if I go reflect a little bit on my own journey, as some of you know, 4 years ago, I lost my marriage, and it came as a complete shock. It came out of nowhere for me. And in hindsight, the signs were there, but I was blind to them. I was in no position to notice them. So when it finally all came to an end, it was a complete shock for me. But things that happened afterwards became as if a greater shock. One of the things that was really hard for me to answer, one of the questions that people would ask me if I met someone who was new, who didn't know me, they would say to me, "So tell me a little bit about yourself. What are you interested in? What do you like?" And I suddenly found that I couldn't answer that question. I could only answer that question in the context of this relationship that I'd been in for the last 18 years. And I knew what we liked as a couple, but I had no idea what I liked. And that's because I had never taken the time to get to know myself. I had no idea who I was. I only knew myself as a wife, as a career woman, and that was really it. And I didn't know anything beyond that. And it really opened up an identity crisis for me. So I needed to figure out who I was, but that was very difficult to do because I didn't believe that I was much. So I had to change how I approached myself, how I loved myself, and in order to increase that belief. And today I have a very good self-image. I have very good self-worth, but that came from a journey of little practices. So how did I achieve that? So there were a few things that I did in order to be able to learn to love myself. The first thing is you have to understand that it really is a relationship that you have with yourself. And you have to treat yourself like you would expect any other relationship in your life to treat yourself. Would you accept that another person treats you with disrespect? So don't accept it from yourself. Would you accept that another person doesn't put time aside to spend with you? So why do you accept that from yourself? So these were very key things that I learned from myself. Now, those who follow my page will see that today I shared yesterday I shared a very interesting Dove advert, which came out a few years ago in France. And when I saw it a few years ago, it really made a profound impact with me. And basically, the advert showed that they had women journal every single thing they said to themselves. And some of them said some really shocking things to themselves. Things like, I'm a big fat blob, or I look like a whale, or my teeth are crooked, or whatever it is. And then they set up a stage where these women would sit in a coffee shop, and in an adjacent table would hear people have conversations with each other using that very same language that they used for themselves. And for the first time, they realized how incredibly disrespectful, even violent, that language was. It was language that we would never say to another human being, yet we say it to ourselves all the time. How can we love someone who we speak to in that way? And when I saw that ad, I realized that I really needed to watch what I said to myself. So the first thing that I did was I started to watch my words. Obviously, it is a habit that we have, and sometimes it's hard to just switch off that habit. But what I started doing was, when I said something to myself that wasn't acceptable, I would catch myself. I would stop, I would think about it, and go as far as to apologize to myself and go, that's not true, and immediately counteract it with something positive. But to set the tone to that, I would start every single day by complimenting myself. I would stand in front of the mirror, I would look at myself in the mirror and say something to myself that was good about myself, something that I appreciated about myself, something that I really felt was good. But it had to be truthful. I had to believe it. It was no use lying to myself. And at the beginning, it was hard to find things, but I had to force myself to find something, and I had to find something different every day. I couldn't compliment myself on the same thing every single day. But that really made me think about how I viewed myself and be more careful about the words I used. And it also helped me then during the day, whenever I said something inappropriate to myself, to catch myself and to stop me. So that was the first practice that I did, and it had a huge impact in how I saw myself. It set up a day for me. It also made it that I didn't accept when another person disrespected me. Sometimes we do accept when people do that, and that's because we think that we deserve that. And that's because we started off disrespecting ourselves. So it made me a lot stronger at standing up for myself and being true to myself. The second thing that I did was I started putting time aside to spend with myself, me time. I always set time aside for other people. My personality is much one that likes to be other-centered and in service of others. My career also for most of my work life has been very much people-orientated and around looking after others. And I am a nurturer by nature. But one of the challenges with being that kind of personality is that sometimes you put yourself aside and you don't look after yourself. And the thing is, when you don't look after yourself, you don't then you start losing the energy and the resources you need to be able to be of value to others. So I started learning to put time aside for myself. One of the rituals that I had was a Sunday evening was mine. I didn't make plans on a Sunday evening. Sunday evenings were mine to do with for myself. And it was not a time for distractions. I couldn't be on the computer checking emails. I couldn't be on social media. TV was also not really an ideal thing, except for certain types of viewing. But it was really about time with myself. Journaling, spending time thinking out my thoughts, maybe pampering myself with long hot baths, with some music on, or whatever it might be. But it was about giving myself what I needed. And I actually scheduled that in my diary. And now I don't need to schedule it. I've gotten the habit. I know now it's time. I need to put time aside for myself. I journal every single day. And those are all things that really helped me to appreciate myself and to nurture my relationship with myself. And through that also get to know myself better. And in that journey of getting to know myself, I put a challenge out to myself. I realized as I was becoming more introverted because I didn't love myself, that I needed to learn to put myself more out there. Now, I was in no condition a few years ago to be able to on my own just put myself out there. So I had to deal with myself. If anybody invited me to anything, it didn't matter what it was, unless it directly conflicted with something else in my diary, I had to say yes. And so went my journey of saying yes. And through that, I tried out all sorts of things that I hadn't tried before. I started doing salsa dancing at one stage. I went zip lining. I went camping. I did not realize how much I enjoyed camping. My entire married life, my ex loved camping. I was not crazy about it. But I guess I've been doing it wrong because I love it. I didn't know that about myself. I really started loving going out in nature and hiking. And this was all coming through saying yes to things, and through that going through a discovery of figuring out what I enjoyed and what I didn't. I got a camera and really enjoyed taking photographs and using my lens to capture everything around me. So I picked up all sorts of interests and things, and through that I got to understand who I was. I got to understand that I am a creative person, which I never thought I was. I've always assumed that I'm not creative. I don't have imagination. I'm an analytical type. I'm more the worker who can do admin and plan things. I'm a project manager, but no creativity. I was wrong. Through trying things, I found out that I do have a creativity, and I enjoy that. I love getting my hands dirty, and I love building stuff and creating stuff. And through that, I also found that I have a little bit of skill in the technical side, in the digital space, which who would have thought I would ever have that? But I do, and I wouldn't have got that if it wasn't through saying yes to opportunities and just going with it. So these were the key practices that really helped me to start learning to love myself. But they were also underpinned by a few other things that I made a point of bringing into my days all the time. So mindfulness is always incredibly important, and there are a lot of different things that you can use in order to be more mindful, but meditation is something that is extremely popular, and it's something that has really worked for me. So there's a lot of different meditation techniques that people can use. For myself, I use a mantra, and that's the most powerful way that works for me. But there are multitudes of them, and it is worthwhile to investigate and find something that works for you. But for me to put time aside to quieten my mind, to get away from the noise that there is all over our lives that get bombarded into our brains, just helps me to slow me down, to make me a little bit more still. And that also just preps me for that time for myself. It's part of that me time every single day. Only 20 minutes in the morning and in the evening, and that's it. We all can find 20 minutes in the morning and the evening, even the most busy of us. The other thing that goes hand in hand with that is it's the practice of gratitude. When we focus on what we're grateful for, then it takes away the focus on all the things that go wrong. And the same applies to ourselves as people. So much like when I was saying I compliment myself every day, I also show gratitude for all the things that I have in my life that make me the person that I am. I'm so grateful that I have been given a sense of creativity. I'm so grateful that I have been given the skills and talents that I have. And through that act of gratitude, that also helps to build my own self-worth. It also makes me very appreciative of the amazing life that I have. You know, we very quickly notice all the things that don't go right in our lives. And yes, there's an endless amount of lists and things that can go on about all the things that are terrible in the world. But there is a lot of stuff that is going really well for us. In fact, we live in a time that no time before us was ever able to do all the things that we can do. I was just able to move my life from one side of the world to another. That couldn't have happened easily 100 years ago. I can speak to a whole audience of people now from the other side of the world. That could not have happened before. So many things for us to be grateful for. We live in the most incredible times. And then the last little thing I'd like to share with you is the importance of kindness. The act of kindness, when we do it for others, it helps us and teaches us also how to do it for ourselves. And it also goes hand in hand with gratitude, because when we are kind to others, it often puts into perspective how amazing our own lives is, because somebody else is in need more than us. And having that daily practice of consciously being kind to others really does grow our own belief in ourselves. So these few steps that I've shown you here, these were the little things that I put into place at various stages. A lot of them remain, in fact, all of them still remain with me every single day. And this is how I have learned to love myself, appreciate myself, and see who I am authentically. And that then brought the basis on which I could build the courage to truly live according to that authenticity. So let's see a little bit what some of the comments were that have come up while I've been chatting away. Thank you so much. Jen said, wow, that's powerful. And then she said, I love what you said about treating the relationship with yourself with the same value and respect that you treat your relationship with others. Yes, Jen, that's such a critical thing for us to see that it is no different. We really get taught all the time that we're somehow selfish if we're thinking about ourselves. But it is so not true. You cannot be of service to others if you're not looking after yourself and looking after that relationship. And Jen also has a question. Let's pop her question up here. Okay. I think so many of us compare ourselves to others. What do you think about that? Yes, that is a brilliant question. We do compare ourselves to others. And we have these perceptions that people around us live these amazing lives, that they have all these skills and talents, that they are beautiful, things come easy to them. But that's because we're all become so adept at hiding what is not good in our lives. We're very fearful to be vulnerable. So we all cover those vulnerabilities and we all package ourselves to be these superhuman people. And so that just adds pressure on all the rest of us, thinking that we also all need to be these supergirls and supermen. But actually, everybody else is in the same boat as us. So comparing ourselves, we are comparing ourselves to an ideal that's not true. we are comparing ourselves to an ideal that's not possible. And unfortunately, the media, and particularly now social media, just makes it even worse. We find, for example, in women's magazines, these ideals about perfect bodies. Meanwhile, they're all photoshopped. Social media, we see our friends' lives on social media, but obviously what's been posted has been carefully chosen to show the most perfect side of a person. None of us are going to post on our timelines anything that is not positive about ourselves. So it creates these images of people leading perfect lives, and we think that we need to live up to that. And it's extremely dangerous. You are the only you in the world. There is nobody else like you. And that's true for every single one of us. We are 7 billion unique individuals. Each one of us have skills and talents that were given specifically to us and cannot be compared to anybody else. And we have to make our contribution to the world. And each one of us, our contribution is different to somebody else's. If we go comparing ourselves to others and think that our contribution should be, and yet we are not gifted with those same skills and talents that they were, obviously our contribution is not going to be what it's meant to be. We need to be authentic to ourselves, not worry about the others. They have their own life to lead. Lead your life, one that's truly you. And you will see that it's purposeful and fulfilling and rewarding. Thank you for that great question, Jen. This question was, how does not loving ourselves show up in other areas of our lives? So it has an incredible impact on the other areas of our lives. So it can come up in various ways. For myself, there was a number of things that happened as a result of not loving myself. The first thing was I was physically very unhealthy. I struggled with my weight. I couldn't eat properly. And my weight problems were related to emotional eating because I was compensating for my lack of self-worth with food. So let me just pop up to give you an idea of what happened when I started to love myself. So on the picture on the left is myself. It's about 3 years ago now that picture was taken in 2014. And when I saw that picture, I was in absolute shock. I didn't realize exactly how bad it had gotten. And but I had at that time decided that I couldn't deal anymore with my weight loss anymore. I had my whole life thought I'm not good enough. I was always on a diet. I was always on some other fad plan, and I'd left it, and I rather focused on myself and loving myself. And somehow then the weight just started falling off on its own. Suddenly I wasn't focused on things like having to deprive myself of food or anything. Because I started loving myself, I started realizing that I deserved to be healthy, and healthy food choices became easy. And just over a year, about 15 months, it took for me to get to the weight. So it was not any kind of fast fad diet. It was done in a very healthy, consistent manner. And I have kept that weight off without any effort. Till now, no problem. And that's because I'm emotionally and psychologically in a very happy space, and because I love myself. The other area where my happiness really, really came up is in the area of wardrobe. I would compensate for my lack of self-worth by purchasing shoes. That is a picture of my shoe collection before I trimmed it down. Obviously now as someone who travels, I can only keep a few pairs of shoes with me, but I had an incredibly large wardrobe of shoes. And it was where I used to soothe myself when I wasn't feeling well. So that now I don't need shoes. I only have 4 pairs of shoes. And in the time that I've been traveling now, I have not missed my other shoes. I have been completely comfortable with just my 4 pairs of shoes. And that's because those shoes were not serving any other purpose but to fill a hole in my life. So that's just a few examples of ways that things can show up when we are bitterly unhappy. They can come up also in how we relate to other people. It could be in maybe you become a workaholic. I was very focused on my career. I still today am very career focused, but I've got a lot more balance in my life. But there was a time when that was the only thing in my life. And again, it was an area I excelled, so it was an area to compensate for how I felt about myself. So it can show up in many different ways. Okay. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Have the most amazing week ahead. Stay tuned and watch the Facebook page. Thanks so much. Love you all.